Oh, the Dolphins have had some struggles. They've lost 4 out of 5, but don't worry. Yes, reinforcements on the way. Tua is back, what you can expect from the Miami offense. And when it comes to elite quarterback play, last time I checked, Joe Burrow was putting up video game type numbers. Don't look now. Cincinnati 1 game away from getting back to 500 in what is going to be a barometer game. We'll tell you everything you need to know as they match up against Philadelphia.
I don't do this for the paycheck. Step out on the field and hear the crowd roar.
We coming to take over.
Hey, mentality game. Energy from the start.
Mahomes is into the end zone. Touchdown.
On the ball, dog.
Derrick Henry flipped the field with a 1-run. Tracer from Jordan Love. He dropped it in the basket.
Fires over the middle for Amari Super Cooper.
Oh, the Bucs offense, you might think it could be grounded without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and yeah, that could be the case, but Baker and the Bucs defense will have to step up against the Falcons squad with first place on the line in the division. And welcome to Game Day Preview. Oh, there is so much that we have going on. We got spiders, we got a spooky edition, Mike Yam, the queen of numbers, Cynthia Freeland, and it is good to have our friend back. I mean, if there's anyone who's been logging some serious miles in the air, Steve White. If I need to get an upgrade, I know who I'm going to.
That's right. Come ride with me, Mike.
Yeah, we're borrowing some of those points. Look, we got a huge slate of games. Let's get right to it, though. When it comes to who's going to be in and who's going to be out, this is what you care about, especially from a fantasy perspective. And Cynthia, in about 30 minutes, will have us covered on some different directions you could go at that wide receiver spot. Keep in mind, T. Higgins, speaking of wide receivers, inactive in that matchup against Philadelphia. We'll talk in depth about that game. And also, in terms of quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph getting the starts. Will Levis inactive because of that shoulder injury. All right, for a little bit more on some of the major headlines going on, NFL insider Mike Garafolo is with us now. All right, Mike, Jaden Daniels, we saw him, wasn't able to finish the game, banged up with a rib injury a week ago. Marcus Mariota, don't worry, he still led the team to about 40 points here. But will we see Jaden Daniels match up against Caleb Williams?
Mike, we're looking at this one later this afternoon. Remember, this game got flexed because of the matchup potentially between number 1, Caleb Williams, number 2, Jaden Daniels. We are optimistic that we are going to see that. Signs pointing toward Jaden Daniels being available with that rib injury that did allow him to practice a little bit on Friday. That was the key. If he didn't do any practice work this past week, I would say his chances were around nil of playing. But the fact that he was able to get in some limited work, you remember head coach Dan Quinn saying that we really pushed him on Friday, so that helped things. Then on Saturday, they didn't elevate Sam Hartman from the practice squad. They have 2 other quarterbacks already on the roster, Mariota, who you just mentioned, as well as Jeff Driscoll. So either way, they felt like they were covered coming into this one. Now, when he gets to the stadium, they're going to have to check him out, see how he feels, what he's able to do, but things have been trending upward for Jaden Daniels, so there is confidence that he will be able to go against the Bears today, and we will see that number 1 versus number 2 matchup. But as you're setting your fantasy lineups by 1 o'clock, it's going to be a bit of a leap of faith. You're just going to have to take it with me. And I say with me because I've got Daniels as well. I think I'm going to start him.
Okay. All right. And by the way, we got, once again, a fantasy segment coming up in just a bit. And Mike, I know you'll be paying attention to that as Cynthia gives us plenty of those details. Meanwhile, and I know, look, this is a Halloween edition for us. I saw this pop up on our monitor before we started here. Mike, this is impressive. Myles Garrett, the Terminator, this is as good as it gets, and maybe rivaling some of the Halloween costumes in the Garofolo household.
I don't know about that one, but I'll tell you this. Myles Garrett brings it every year for Halloween, and he certainly brought it this year. We've got the trade deadline coming up. Will it be trick or treat for Myles Garrett? He said the other day, I'll be playing here. Here meaning Cleveland. My understanding is, he's been given that expectation. You're not going anywhere. Why would the Browns trade him away? This is the kind of guy that is a defensive centerpiece. He is a franchise centerpiece. So my understanding is he is unlikely to go anywhere. So is Max Crosby, another defensive player of the year annual candidate. He spoke about how he doesn't want to be part of a rebuild, but then on his podcast said that, he wants to be a Raider. He's made that clear. What he wants is to be a Raider, and he wants this to be a quick turnaround for this team. We know this roster needs a lot of work, but the Raiders have indicated how much publicly and privately they want him to be around. He's not going elsewhere, and their confidence in Antonio Pierce, the head coach, and Tom Telesco, the general manager, that this can be a quick turnaround and not a long rebuild. So I expect both of those guys to remain in place. As for guys that could be on the move, let's look at Garrett's teammate, Zadarius Smith. If you're looking for an edge rusher, that is a strong possibility of a guy to be moved. I'd also throw in the Patriots' Josh Uche, who is a healthy scratch today, probably because the Patriots don't want him to get hurt if they're going to wind up trading him. So those are the two edge rushers. And a wide receiver to keep an eye on, Deontay Johnson, who was traded once this offseason from the Steelers to the Panthers. I'm thinking it's better than 50-50 that he is going to be on the move again to a team that needs a weapon both now and moving forward. If he gets dealt, could also be an extension with whatever team acquires him shortly thereafter, but we'll see. A couple of steps before we get to that point, Mike.
Yeah, look, a couple of crucial positions here. I think there's some elite teams that could use a little bit of wide receiver help, and who in the NFL wouldn't love an elite pass rusher? Mike, I know if any of this news breaks, he will have us covered here on Game Day Preview. Meanwhile, there's also a pretty significant matchup that I think all eyes will be on, and yes, looking forward to seeing Jamar Chase, who, by the way, has got the second most yards after the catch in the NFL this season. Good test for the Bengals as they get the Eagles. For a little bit more, Tom Pelissero's got us covered from Cincinnati.
Yammer, Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins officially inactive today after pulling his quad in practice on Friday. My understanding is he wanted to give it a go, just physically couldn't get there. Obviously, that puts more heat onto Jamar Chase, who told me he expects to see a lot of cloud coverage, taking away the deep ball from the Eagles today. Could also be a good day to be one of the Bengals tight ends. On the other side of the ball, cornerback Mike Hilton told me the keys to this game are stopping Saquon Barkley and forcing Jalen Hurts to throw. If they do that, Coach Nick Sirianni told me Jalen's a big-time playmaker. He's going to make some big plays in this game. Yam?
Tom always has got us covered. I think all of us are certainly looking forward to a matchup like this, and yet I think about a lot of the offensive players. Obviously, Saquon, we saw what he did against the Giants a week ago, but the reality is defense has been playing a little bit better, and right now Joe Burrow is, I think, in the short list, Cynthia, too, for maybe even MVP along with Lamar Jackson. What do you expect to see?
Well, I mean, look, excuse me real quick, choked up real quick. But, look, to me it's the Bengals.
Yeah.
Are they for real, right? They win this game. They're at 500, but they've beaten 3 teams that are probably going to be drafting in the top 6 or 7 next year. That's why I think this is such a litmus test. And again, we know T. Higgins, so let's talk about what they could do offensively. We know Joe Burrow, 14 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. We know Jamar Chase. We talked about that. This is the big test. They've got to stop Saquon. We heard Tom Pelissero's report right there. So defensively, both sides of the ball, they're going to be challenged. But if they win this game, Cynthia, we are talking about the Bengals being in full contention for a playoff berth.
I actually think this is, for two teams that rarely play each other, this is a really pivotal game for both of them. Because if the Eagles don't win this, we'll be like, uh-oh, what's going on here, right? But I'm looking at this offense now and what's going to happen. All right, we know that the Eagles, since they're by 13 sacks in 2 weeks. That's a huge deal. And we know Joe Burrow hasn't been under a ton of pressure this year. Second lowest pressure rating allowed, so that O-line has been really holding up. Well, now you don't have one of your field stretchers, so T. Higgins is not playing. However, Jamar Chase is still in, and we also remember Mike Gesicki will be a big factor in this matchup. So when I'm looking at how this kind of maps out and nets out without T. Higgins, well, if you need a tight end, go get Mike Gesicki for your fantasy roster.
All right.
I'm a little bit more concerned about Jamar Chase's workload now that you don't have as many people to distract, right? So maybe he won't get as many open coverages as we might have seen before. I still think a massive day is in store for him. But again, it's Mike Gesicki here with the uptick for fantasy. I wouldn't try to navigate other wide receivers in this offense. Sure, we could probably have one that, a touchdown that doesn't help anyone in fantasy, but those are the two.
And Jamar Chase is used to be in double and triple teams, so he can still do his thing.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, we will talk a little bit more from the Philadelphia perspective a little bit later here on Game Day Preview, but I can't help but think the juiciness of this matchup. Two teams that, quite frankly, may be in a different position at this point of the season that we had thought earlier this year. Meanwhile, first place on the line in the NFC South. And yes, Kirk Cousins ready to rock and roll. Last time we saw him on the field against the Bucs, he went for a career-high 509 yards.
Swag surfing.
Yes. For a little bit more on this matchup, Jane Slater's got us covered from Tampa Bay.
Thanks, Yamal. In Week 5, it was a thrilling matchup between these two NFC South rivals. If you'll recall, it was Kirk Cousins who threw for over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. The final one proved to be the game winner. The biggest issue for the Bucs was they were allowing the chunk plays. That proved to be the dagger. What's helping the Bucs today is the return of Antoine Whitfield. You know, the Bucs, for their part, are not going to have Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. So that means they're going to be leaning on the three-headed monster that is their running backs. And defensively, the Falcons have struggled to defend against the run, 28th in the league. I also just learned that Justin Simmons, their safety, who made the trip here and has been dealing with a hamstring issue, he will be out of this game. Mike?
All right, Jane, so a lot of injuries all over the place. I'm glad she brought up Bucky Irving, who we showed you a little bit earlier on the graphic. Active in this game, he was dealing with toe injury. Look, we could talk about this offense, but if Tampa Bay wins this game, I got to imagine the defense is what really is what's going to put them over the top.
Well, absolutely, and neither team played defense when they met 2 weeks ago. Remember, that's a 36-30 game with the walk-off win by the Atlanta Falcons. But again, the Bucs defense, you know, we're saying no Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin. That's 11 touchdowns and 900 yards off the field. This is still a very good football team, right? I think in the short term, they're going to give the Falcons a tough game because you heard Jane say Antoine Winfield, one of the best safeties in the NFL, is back. That could stop some of the stuff that they like to do up the middle, but he plays a lot of different ways. We know how strong they are up front, and they're a linebacker. So some of the things the Falcons like to do in their passing game, especially that intermediate game that Kirk O'Chains loves, the Bucs are a tough matchup. I think this is going to be one hell of a competitive football game.
I'm looking at this one, and I'm glad we're seeded because I was very surprised when I saw the stat that last week was the first time in Bijan Robinson's professional career that he had over 100 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown in the same game. It just felt wrong.
Totally.
I was like, I'm sorry, but is that real?
He's splitting the backfield, splitting carries.
I'm like, I'm sorry, it just felt crazy. But if you have some of those injuries that you talk about on the defense, so Justin Simmons being out, that's a big deal for that safety position. How do you counteract some missing pieces on your defense? You know what you do? You run the football. And you know who you're going to run it with? Bijan. So maybe we now have 2 weeks in a row where he gets 100-plus rushing yards and a trip to the end zone. But it's just fascinating to me that that even happened in the first place. There are a lot of interesting pieces on this offense that I like, but I think having the stability in the run game changes the quotient for all of it. It changes the opportunity for Drake London. It changes the opportunity for Kyle Pitts. But get the run game going.
And Drake London eats against the Buccaneers as well.
Yeah. You know what's wild? I saw the same stat, and my mind was sort of blown here. And I think it's a testament to the impact that certain guys have on the field that maybe doesn't always pop up.
You thought there'd be like 7 or 8 of them. Like I thought you'd be like, oh, half the game's left. I'm sure, whatever, you know. Nope,
Fast,
just the one.
shifty, just elusive.
Tyler Algier comes in to close it out.
And that's part of the equation as well. And I know what everyone's thinking about, a big matchup between two of the younger, better quarterbacks in the NFL. It is time for Rookie Watch, presented by New Era. All right, I get it. Jaden Daniels. I know Mike Garafolo told us, hey, real game-time decision against the Bears. And yet, for you, if he's out there, this is a really significant game for the number 2 overall pick.
This is we're going to be positive right now. We're going to say, if he's out here, what should you see? Well, you're seeing historically paced performance from this guy, and I think that would continue. If they're going to put him out here, he knows this is. I think O'Roy is probably already sealed up.
I don't know about that.
8 weeks.
Don't know about that.
If he comes out here and just shows out, then I feel like it's going to be hard to convince other people otherwise, especially against a defense in the Bears that of these two defenses is by far and away the more difficult one, despite missing Kyler Gordon, despite missing Jaquan Brisker. Like, there are some good pieces missing there. But Jalen Johnson's going to be like, hey, rookie, welcome to the NFL. But ultimately, I'm really excited to see how this all kind of shakes out in Washington.
And one thing Dan is doing, he's really uplifting a franchise. But you know who else is? Caleb Williams. Look, I saw Caleb 2 weeks ago over in London, and granted, they're playing a Jaguars defense that can be schemed up. But his decision-making, right, now you're starting to see it. And what they've done, I spoke to their quarterback coach, Kerry Joseph, he likes to go up-tempo. So you'll see them on about their second or third series, go no huddle, go up-tempo, and that's when he starts feeling it. He knows where to go with the ball. He knows when to pull it down and run it. And once he gets into that rhythm, that's where the talent takes over. So, no, the O'Roy is not settled. That's going to go to week 17. We're not going to do it this early in the season, Cynthia, because that man right there, he's legit.
I'm not suggesting he's not legit. I really like him a lot, and I think he's done really well. But I feel like the expectations, Washington's were like, holy cannolis, like I could actually win the division. And so I think and everyone expected Caleb to come out here and be banging from the start. So it's all about expectations and wins. That's where I come. I'm not suggesting that he's not good.
Yeah, it's a really good point too.
It's a great point.
The Bears came out of the gate and some struggles, and they have picked it up, winners of 3 consecutive games. And don't look now. Can Washington be the team to beat in that division? Wild to me. All right, more to come. And Jared Goff putting up really historic, significant numbers in terms of the efficiency. It's a matchup against Tennessee, who I know doesn't rack up a ton of wins, but Steve says throw the records out the door. Closer look at this game still to come here on Game Day Preview.
Sonic and Knuckles. It's official.
Gibbs is Sonic. Montgomery's going with Knuckles.
Let's go!
Me and Jameer, we go hand in hand. Jameer is fast, he's shifty.
Oh, baby! That's the man they call Sonic!
Yeah! I'm strong and I'm powerful.
Montgomery running through contact.
2-5-4 bump, y'all.
Play every drive. Take care of your brother.
Both playmakers, both game changers.
Sonic and Knuckles, I think it works well. I'm going to run with it.
Yeah, it is a two-headed monster. That's part of that equation Jameer gives, as explosive as they come. For a little bit more on the matchup that the Lions have as they face the Titans, Stacey Dales has more from Detroit.
The 5-1 Lions at home, not overlooking the 1-5 incoming Tennessee Titans. One of the big matchups, of course, is this high-octane second total offense with Detroit facing, yes, the #1 defense in football for Tennessee. It's what they're hanging their hat on. They know they have to finish. But Dan Campbell, almost effusive in his praise for how good this unit is defensively. I spoke with Lions players, including Jameer Gibbs, who told me they do a great job mixing coverages and their blitz looks, different formations up front. But he said of his offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson,
He always hooks us up. He always cooks something up for us. And they feel very confident coming into this one, though. Again, guys, not overlooking these Titans. By the way, Will Levis out officially at quarterback, and Mason Rudolph, the starter for Tennessee.
Well, Stacey just gave us a lot to unpack here, especially when you had mentioned this to me earlier. I saw it last night as I was prepping for the show. I'm like, damn, Tennessee's defense is this good at 1-5. A little surprising here, but I want to focus in on this running backs duo because, yeah, they're putting up big numbers. That offensive line, arguably the best in the NFL. I know you love that Lions squad. What's been the most impressive thing about that duo in the backfield?
Well, the way that they're doing it in different, kind of circumstances. Last week, we saw it, unfortunately, kind of because of an injury to David Montgomery. We saw that Jahmyr Gibbs could run the David Montgomery plays. And then we saw that David Montgomery could do the Jahmyr Gibbs plays. So ultimately, what you're seeing here are concepts and this whole tree of decisions for Jared Goff that say, if you get this, then do this. If you get this, then do that, right? So ultimately, you are creating so many different options. You're also getting a ton of help in pass pro. Both guys are willing to take some heat there, which not every running back is willing to do. We're, a lot of fantasy players are like, hey, what's going on? My guy's on the field, he's not getting the ball. He is blocking, and that is a big deal. Teams love blockers, and you know who really loves it? Jared Goff. So that is ultimately why this run game is so efficient and effective, is these guys are actually doing the full job. Both of them are 3-down running backs, but they just use them a little bit differently based on matchups to scheme up the best opportunities.
And the one thing with the Lions, they uplift one another. Like, oh, he's doing this. Well, I got to play a little bit better. And that's why this game for me is a true test of their mettle. I am all on the Lions bandwagon right now. I've been saying they're Super Bowl. Thank you very much.
Glad
a Super
to have
Bowl
you.
contender since the beginning. But this is the type of game if we see they're real, right? They just had a tough game in beating the Vikings last week. They've got the Packers next week. They see this 1-5 team, and you heard Stacey say they're not overlooking them. That's easy to say. Right, when you come out here, this Titans team now, they've got nothing to lose. Mason Rudolph, nothing to lose at quarterback, and this defense will slug you out. So this is where they've got to be tough. Ben Johnson, the OC's got to be really good scheming some things up. But this, to me, is kind of the type of game that's got "be careful" written all over it for Detroit.
Couldn't agree with you more, especially now considering the distractions of Jamison Williams getting suspended for 2 games. And I know we already talked about Aiden Hutchinson being gone, but by the way, still matters in this one. It's not like he's coming back. So ultimately, both of those things together.
Mike Garafolo, by the way, was telling us about some guys that could be on the move. Maybe the Lions are interested in one of those pass rushers.
Better be.
Get a good one.
Checked.
Come on, Brad.
Yeah.
We need a good one.
Yes, you do. I got to tell you, super excited for this. Tua back on the football field. For a little more context around this return, we head to Miami. Cam Wolf's got us covered.
Tua Tagovailoa didn't seriously consider retirement after his third scary concussion in the last 2 years. He said, I know the risk, and I am playing the odds. For him, he's told people that he was frustrated with the idea that he's the concussion guy, and he believes that if he was able to play earlier, not placed on injury reserve, he would have. For him, he did take this process seriously, though, seeing several medical experts across the country, and not a single one recommended that he should retire. His teammates, however, are recommending that he slide. Raheem Mostert said you can't take a horse to water and make him drink. And Tyreek Hill said, damn right we tell him to slide. And he encouraged the fans here in the stadium today to clap every time Tua slides. We need him to stay healthy. We need him. He's our brother.
They do need him to stay healthy. Before the season started, you told me you were high on this Miami squad. Now,
very much so.
You lose your quarterback, things are going to happen. This offense has been grounded without Tua.
Well, look, and this is why this is interesting, because I'm calling this game an awkward validation. And this is, and by I say that, this is very serious because they need him, right? When you need a player whose long-term health is potentially at risk, it's like, wow, what are we weighing right here? But Tua is going to play, all right? It's hard for a player to say, I'm going out because what could happen 25 years later to my health, I don't know is going to exist. So here's my big thing, because everyone's telling him to do this or that. If he plays well and the Dolphins win today, none of us tomorrow are going to be talking about his long-term health. We're going to be talking about the Dolphins' potential short-term to playoff hopes, and that's why I call this an awkward validation.
I mean, I'm just awkward, but ultimately the quick pass will be a really big deal in this one yet again. That's how Mike McDaniel got him going last year. And that's how he's been great. And that also helps reduce the amount of pressure that you feel and the amount of potential, things that we don't want to see. So keeping that quick game going, just let Tyreek Hill run with it. We know he can do it. Let Jalen Waddle run with it. Let's just do that. So ultimately, when I'm watching this game, I would imagine a lot of quick stuff is coming, especially against a Cardinals front that's not trying to bring a ton of pressure.
Right.
They're just not.
Dolphins have been held to 15 points or fewer in each of the last 5 games.
Not today.
I am with you. Something tells me we are not done talking about that game. I know we're not because it's part of my Sunday statement for a little bit later. Time for Who Scores It is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. A closer look at a little same-game parlay for you. By the way, I'm going to throw this out there. Jordan Love, just in case you're wondering where he's at or why he's on this board, averaging about 270 passing yards per game this season. So, Steve, I ask you in this matchup, who do you like to find the end zone?
Wide receiver Dontavian Wicks, a big play wide receiver. And look, this Jags defense can be schemed up. That's one thing I see. One of the best play schemers out there is Matt LaFleur. So Wicks with the explosive play gets into the end zone.
All right, Ravens and Browns, Cynthia. I feel like there's a lot of playmakers to choose from, especially on one side of the field.
Hey, the Browns are going to have some scores too.
Okay.
David Njoku. But I'm looking here at, I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit here. Derrick Henry, anyone?
Way to go out on a limb, Cynthia.
Listen, I'm going to be I know I've surprised the whole world. You can't get this type of football analysis anywhere else, folks. Derrick Henry to the end zone. But I really just want to celebrate how epic he's been as a Raven. He's such a huge reason why this team is doing so well. There are some things in that defense that could be a little scary. They give up a bunch of yak. So what do? Just give the ball to Derrick Henry and run. Tractor over people.
Leading the NFL in carries, rushing yards, and scrimmage touchdowns so far this season. I like that stat. 2 receiving touchdowns for Derrick Henry that we have seen. That's not what the norm is. No. Watching him absolutely.
That's not what defensive coordinators go into the game planning for.
No.
DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns this season. And this week, new customers can bet $5 and pocket $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code GAME when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. All right, still to come here on Game Day Preview. We saw Kyler kind of lead his team. I think he did because he's the quarterback and they got a win on Monday night. Offensively, there were some tougher moments. We'll see what it looks like today.
the real Houdini is Patrick Mahomes. But we'll see now if there's enough magic left for them to three-peat, which is unheard of.
Dramatic victory by a toenail. And the Chiefs win it at the buzzer.
I got to still clean it up.
It's intercepted in the end zone.
Everybody just step up a little bit and make plays. It's nice to know that we have a great running game.
Following his blockers, he's into the end zone.
We got a great defense.
The pass intercepted the third time in this game.
We're winning football games, which is awesome, but we're going to try to continue to get better.
DeAndre Hopkins finally became a Chief.
The NFL's last unbeaten squad, the Chiefs, they're matching up against the Raiders. The D-Hop effect, Cynthia, is what for Patrick Mahomes?
Contested catches, baby, but also deeper passes, right? So what we've seen from Patrick Mahomes this year is a short average depth of target and a lot of yak, and that is not usually what we see from him. However, what does DeAndre Hopkins do best? Well, he just crushes you on the perimeter, get on the goal line, toe drag sway. He may have invented that. I'm not sure, unclear, but look, when I'm watching the opportunity, DeAndre Hopkins has caught passes in difficult circumstances. How about that?
Yes.
That's a nice way of saying it, right?
Yes.
So difficult circumstances. Now he gets to catch passes from Patrick Mahomes. We are all in for a treat.
Yeah, nobody's happier right now than Amari Cooper and DeAndre Hopkins to be traded to the situations that they went to. Right, but what D-Hop will do is he's going to kind of be a different branch of what Rashee Rice and Juju Smith-Schuster have done in terms of being mainly a slot guy who can go up around the numbers, up the hash. He can bend it inside, but at a deeper depth to create underneath space for Travis Kelce. But as Cynthia just said, he also can work the sideline like nobody's business. Mahomes hasn't had a big receiver to be able to do that since he had Sammy Watkins. So this is going to add a new wrinkle to this offense. And when you talk about where they can go underneath, intermediate, and deep, they have that. The Chiefs, they get those veteran wide receivers midseason every year, and they always work out.
Yeah, it feels like D-Hop is the missing piece that we've been waiting for from a Kansas City perspective in pursuit for yet another Super Bowl. Two teams that did have some Super Bowl aspirations that are still trying to figure it out, they're playing today.
This is the best team the Niners have had for a long time.
Ball slipped out of his hands. It's intercepted.
What is going on? All in. All in.
Prescott over the middle, pass is intercepted. What a horrible decision that was.
Purdy got hit. He fumbled the ball.
Scramble, fumble, sack.
It's a catastrophe.
For the Niners, they're very banged up. Is there any even sign of life about Christian McCaffrey?
Dallas is not very good.
I think their season's done.
I feel you, man. I feel you. Time for Road Warriors.
That is dreary right there.
Yes, it is. Road Warriors presented
Gloom
by
and doom.
Courtyard Marriott. Well, for a lot of reasons, when you look at the way the two seasons have gone for both of these respective teams, from a Niners perspective, you actually think that this is a critical game. I think the same could be said from a Dallas perspective, but why are you focusing in on Brock Purdy?
Well, what we've seen from Brock Purdy is actually a reversal of an 8-year trend for the Niners, which is lots of yak and a lower air yard per target. This year, it's been completely reversed, and it's actually very hard to sustain deep passes for such a long time, especially with this many receivers sort of on this carousel of being injured. You're just increasing your odds of being turned over. We saw it last week. However, what do the Cowboys defenders not do? They don't tackle.
They do not tackle.
They're not trying to give you no yak. They're giving you all the yak. So I think the yak or lack of yak reversal, that trend happens starting today for Brock Purdy.
Deron Bland, Micah Parsons, both not playing, and that is going
double, whatever I said, just double it. Just double it.
A little bit of a buzzkill from that perspective. Colts and Texans. I'm wondering, is there a blueprint now for C.J. Stroud, how to defend him?
This is intriguing to me. First off, I mean, it's a little concerning for me for the Texans because so many of their up-the-middle defenders are hurt, right?
Sure.
Henry To'o, Azeez Al-Shaair in the middle. They have a safety. But I want to go to the Colts defense. And I don't know if there's necessarily a blueprint because, you know, the Colts play a very base type of defense. They don't mix it up a lot. They're kind of steady up front, let our guys win. They get the Forrest Buckner back today. That's huge. And then all the guys in the back end, sure-handed tacklers. But look, C.J. Stroud threw for 86 yards last week against the Packers. That ain't happening today, right? They're going to get some things going in their offense, but they are going to have to pressure Stroud a little bit. I mean, in the season opening game, that was a real fun game, the way they kind of got after each other. I think they got to keep doing what they're doing, but the guys up front have to win to put a little seed of doubt in TJ's mind.
Yeah, I think there's another matchup that, candidly, I'm really looking forward to. Bills on the road against Seattle earlier this season. Bills came out of the gate. They were winning some football games, then lost back-to-back road games against Houston and Baltimore. I think it's an opportunity to right the ship here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting matchup. I mean, he's not going to do it, but he hasn't done a thing that does a bad thing in 286 passes. It's a Bills record. It's a very important position.
You don't talk about records like this.
You don't talk about records like this. You just watch them unfold. It's going to be a curious matchup if that can stay going forward, because we do believe and see those. Sometimes I see when this doesn't, when Josh Allen doesn't turn the ball over, they're 21-0 or 20-1.
Most quarterbacks probably have that type of
That is right. Yes. That is exactly right. But in this case, it actually does align quite well with some of the things that you see. It's more of an instructive metric than it is a pure oh no, it's just, as long as he keeps the ball from being turned over, then everything's fine. But when you have your defense change, and especially the spine of the defense being different, and you know that Geno Smith and this offense can create some downfield passes quickly, even without DK Metcalf, should he not be able to go, that is a really big deal to be able to have Josh Allen really just controlling it by not doing that thing that he's not going to do, and I didn't say it, so.
I'll spell it.
Nope.
Because that's okay, right? No?
Don't ask me.
It's like a no-hitter, right? You don't talk about it, after a certain point. But this is the streak. Look, here's what I'll just say. We saw the video of Josh Allen. Notice the ball was going into his own receiver's hand.
There we go.
That's exactly what.
A good hand.
Yeah, it just not the other.
I'm not going to do it. I didn't say it. I managed to get through a whole week of TV without saying it. You're welcome.
We have to get you on a $10,000 pyramid, brother.
Oh, you used to kill it. Back in college, what was the Taboo? You ever play that game back in the day? Oh my God, it was like cheat mode when I used to play with my college roommates. We just knew each other.
There they are.
Kinda
Look
scary.
at the unis.
Oh, I love those throwbacks. Baker Mayfield, he'll be out there as top wide receivers won't. What does it mean from a fantasy perspective? No one better to ask than Cynthia Freeland. back here on Game Day Preview. Nothing better than seeing Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase absolutely thrive on the football field, especially when they are healthy. Chase is, T. Higgins is not, which has us thinking about some banged up wide receivers. Now, Higgins is actually not on IR. He's just hurt right now. But keep in mind here, you look at some of these numbers. 69 players have started their team's season in the opener that have been placed now on IR. Since 2000, all 4 of the most injured seasons to Week 1 starters prior to Week 8 have been over the last 5 seasons. I don't know if there's something in the water. I don't know how to explain numbers like that. But Cynthia Freeland, when you think about it from a fantasy perspective, please tell me what a fantasy owner should do if they got one of those dudes.
Well, make sure they're not in your lineup,
Yes.
number 1, because that's
Step
a problem. And step 2, maybe consider Jackson Smith and Jigba in this matchup against the Bills. Obviously, even if DK goes, he's banged up. And this opportunity here to stay sort of away from the 2 best spots in that secondary, meaning you don't want to go near Christian Benford. You don't really want to go near Rasul Douglas either. So let's just pick the guy who doesn't really go there as often. Let's go the guy who gives him the slot a little bit more and gives you that opportunity to target the middle of the field where there is no Matt Milano, where the linebackers could be in coverage. And you could see some opportunities here where, and by the way, Jackson Smith and Jigba is quietly at 37 receptions this season. We don't really talk about that enough. He's, in the top 15 echelon here in terms of total number of catches. So in a PPR league, that's pretty helpful. And then we have to talk about DeAndre Hopkins.
Oh.
Because you need him.
The happiest man 100%. In the NFL right now?
Yeah.
I mean, I drafted him like really late because I just love him. And I'm actually the happiest person because now I get to play him. He's a great opportunity, especially in this matchup. Now, last week we saw the Raiders corners have actually very, very good day. But this is a little different. And when you've got that whole weirdo puppet situation that you're going to avenge, and you bring in DeAndre Hopkins, I just feel like there's some weirdo puppet revenge play to Nuke that just absolutely, what do they call it? Like Arrowhead West or whatever they call it.
I love how we bring Nuke in to settle the Kermit the Frog puppet thing that Jack Johnson was doing there.
Listen,
right?
Well, who might DeAndre Hopkins line up against? Weirdo puppet situation guy.
It's Halloween.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Just get spooky with it. Hey, by the way, speaking of teams that are dealing with wide receiver issues, look, DK has got the MCL situation. I don't know if he's officially been ruled out to that point. We know we'll see D-Hop out there, but I know Mike Evans won't be out there. I know Chris Godwin is not going to be out there. What's a fantasy owner to do?
Welcome to your fantasy lineup, Jalen McMillan.
There we go.
Listen, I love Huskies. Obviously, I have 2 of them, but I like them also when they become NFL players.
Well played.
We were talking a lot about Rome Odunze ahead of the draft, but Jalen McMillan, you are getting some opportunities. We know Baker Mayfield's going to slang it against the Falcons, and the Falcons, they're missing a couple of pieces on the defense. So I'm not worried about Baker Mayfield getting some targets. I've seen Jalen McMillan be the subject of these targets, so in addition to National Tight End Day, you're going to want to play K. Dotton too, but you were already playing him.
There he is.
But Jalen McMillan and K. Dotton, both of those 2. Maybe Trey Palmer if you're really in desperate times, but I would say go with McMillan if you're looking for which of the Bucs to elevate in the absence of the 2 best wide receivers for the Bucs.
Madison, our producer, is loving the Cade Otten take.
Cade
is my guy, and
Love
every
it.
time I go there, she loves it. So Madison, Cynthia gives you Cade Otten today.
We'll take it. And by the way, Cade's been playing great. And you mentioned Huskies, 2 Huskies now in that lineup. Actually balled out a couple years ago playing up at Washington. That offense, man, you think about some of those pieces that they've been working with the last couple times. Really impressive. I don't see Cade on this board. No, he is
No
not.
respect, man.
Cade Otten. Oh, my goodness.
Respect.
Hey, listen, put him right on there.
Yeah,
you know?
although this is a heck of a collection of tight ends. Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Tight Ends Day, which got us thinking. It's time for Who's Eating Good, and it's presented by Applebee's. Just based off of the fact that we flashed some tight ends, just give me a name here.
David Njoku. I already told you that I liked his opportunities, but last week he saw the end zone from Jameis Winston, who will be starting again today. He also saw, 14 measly targets. He caught 10 of them. just a little bit of love for him.
How'd that work out?
Also, the Baltimore Ravens, we talk about, they give up yak on defense. Are you going to find a bigger physical mismatch for anyone? And there's a bunch of their corners are out too. Marlon Humphrey isn't playing.
Humphrey's out.
So ultimately, Big buddy David Njoku, welcome to the end zone.
I love it because the Ravens asked their linebackers to do a lot.
They do.
Njoku is someone who could really put stress on him.
Yeah, kind of a buzzkill from a Humphrey perspective. 2 interceptions last time out, got hurt and banged up.
Oh, he's a great player. That's why my point is things become way better for everyone when he's not playing.
David Njoku, okay. Who was on that board? I think I saw it.
He was on the board.
Yeah, I think I saw Trey McBride front and center there. I was like, okay.
Evan Ingram on there, too.
Yeah, I was like, all right, it's that time McBride's been getting plenty of love here. You know who's been loved up the last couple seasons, and rightfully so? Jalen Hurts. Can he get it done? Big matchup today. We're not done talking about the Eagles. That's still to come here on Game Day Preview. Two-headed monster that has just been disastrous for teams. You got Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP, and pair him with Derrick Henry. Good things typically happen. I know there were some questions about the value that Derrick Henry could bring to this Ravens team. Some people like Ryan Clark, who joined Cam Jordan on the Off the Edge podcast, had some questions, but the proof is in the pudding.
When they signed Derrick Henry, I was like, all right, like, what does that do? We're talking about a team that could always run the football. How does this elevate him? And now I see. You stacking the box. You're putting 8 people in the box every snap. And Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman out here cooking folks one-on-one. And Lamar's passing game is elevated. By the way, when he wants to run, he's the best athlete on the field. And so I think just watching them play Tampa Bay, bro, and score at ease after having a slow start was just one of those things that really made you sit back and marvel at his greatness and at what Derrick Henry's added to that team.
Nice when you get to pick up the phone if you're Cam Jordan and get all your friends that can stop by the show. Time for one big question here. We talked about this, and I missed you on Monday night because I would have asked you this question. I asked David Carr about the Ravens, and are they the most unstoppable team in the NFL? I'll get your answer on in a second, but I'll let you kick things off here.
I'm going to go with yes. I mean, ultimately, they're being able to overcome their flaws by such a great offense, but I still think, we even talked about this in the break just now, some of the names on this defense, LaRoquan Smith of the world, the Kyle Hamiltons of the world, they're some of the best at their positions in the entire league. So kind of maneuvering and getting them into the right spot would just change the quotient even more. But the offense, and right now, I think this might be the last week. You cover your ears, you're not going to like this again. The last week, you're going to get good odds on MVP situation being Lamar Jackson. I know there's a lot of football left to be played, and it probably won't be something where, a week from now you'll say, it's week 8. Who's going to be the MVP? Nope, it's probably going to be Lamar Jackson again, and it's going to go from positive to negative. Don't worry about it.
You want to say Jared Goff so bad, though.
No.
You want Jared to make a rally.
Of course I want Jared. I just want Jared to make it to the postseason. I want win the division. I'm modest here. Modest hopes.
Well, to off your point and Ryan Clark's point, like initially with Derrick Henry, people were saying he doesn't operate well out of the shotgun quarterback. Well, John Harbaugh comes out early. We're not going to give it to him 30 times a game. Guess what? He's operating well of a shotgun quarterback and giving him the ball 30 times a game. But to Cynthia, to follow that up, offensively, they are the most unstoppable team, but defensively, man, they have not figured it out yet. Yeah. This is a team that's giving up 26 points per game on average, and this is a team who historically has been built on defense and locking teams down. They've got to tighten that up because the Chiefs aren't giving up 26 points a game, right? Some of these other teams are not giving up that type of big plays, especially in the pass game. Again, you see their linebackers. They are getting stressed with some of the things that they're being asked to do, especially on the back end as well. Cynthia mentioned Kyle Hamilton. We're not talking about him like we used to. They've got to figure some things out if they want to be most unstoppable on both sides of the ball.
It's good to have to figure it out when you're winning games.
Correct.
5 consecutive wins. Lamar Jackson, by the way, more passing yards, more passing touchdowns through 7 games than he did in either of his 2 MVP seasons. He might get another one this season if it continues to trend in this direction. And look, he means a ton to this team. I can't help but think about another quarterback who means everything to their squad. And once again, you look at the results without Tua in the lineup for the Miami Dolphins. They've been disastrous. What's the expectation for him?
Told you before, and I'll say it again, it's the quick passing. We saw last season that Tua Tagovailoa had the quickest time to pass in the NFL. Catch and run. When you have speed demons on your team, like Tyreek Hill, who actually, he's doing my analysis for me because he said, we got the band is bleeping back together, and I would play me in fantasy. That is very true on all angles. Play everyone in this matchup. The running backs are there. Both, like all of the wide receivers that you'd want to play in fantasy, they're there. You don't even want to play the tight end in this situation. Jonnu Smith, huh?
Yes.
Whoa. Yeah, absolutely. So when I'm looking at the opportunity for Tua, it's the quick passes, it's the rhythm, it's staying out of harm's way. They're not going to try to pressure you too much. They don't blitz a ton. So let's go to a quick pass.
More on the Dolphins and this offense coming up in just a moment here, but I'm thinking about another young quarterback in Bryce Young. That's another opportunity. It's on the road against a Denver defense that's been pretty good.
It's really good. Not pretty good. Really good.
This is a really good defense.
I'm trying to kind of squash it a little bit because look, everyone that you talk to that knows Bryce, they love him. But is this his last chance with the Panthers to show that he can be the dude?
It's really tough. It's actually not a fair thing if you're going to put it on one game. But I'm going to say yes because, look, he might not come out and look great today, but if he has command of the huddle, if he does things that he wasn't doing earlier in the year, maybe he gets another shot. But this Broncos defense is going to cause him problems, especially because he just doesn't have a good roster to play with. And this is where, though, the Panthers have been so steadfast in Andy Dalton, because you've got to get a whole club to buy in. And if Bryce is out there just not getting it done, well, where's the buy-in going to come? And this is going to be a tough
On the flip side, also in that conversation. They got to win some more football games, but it's good from an Eagles perspective, Steve, that they are healthy. And Jalen, when he's got healthy pieces around him, usually puts up some good numbers, and they win.
Interesting lately how we see when these quarterbacks get back their WR1s, how much better they look. A.J. Brown, 11 catches, 2 touchdowns, 205 yards, and back-to-back touchdowns since he's been back from that hamstring injury he suffered in week 1. I mean, this is a guy, the explosive play. He's got several catches of 40-plus yards in those 2 games. So, again, you open that up. That opens up the field for Saquon. And we know that the Bengals are not good against the run. But A.J. Brown is the player I'm looking for. But him and Jamar Chase, man, they could be back and forth. We could have a track meet.
Oh, yeah, it'd be awesome to see that.
Yeah, I'm looking at, I told you, we were talking about this. The Eagles' defensive front, since their bye, they have turned up the heat. They've figured out the pressure potential. 13 sacks in the past 2 weeks. Now, Joe Burrow has not been under very much pressure, second lowest pressure rate allowed. However, when the pressures have come, they have turned into a sack at a top 10 rate. So when he gets pressured, it's the bad pressure.
Wow.
That's the bad kind. But if he's not under pressure, so I want to know which one's real. Is it real that the Bengals O-line is good, or is it more real that the Eagles have figured out their defense? That's the question I'm looking to solve in this matchup. I also think that little bit of push from the Eagles defense puts them over the top and makes them upset the Bengals at home.
I like that.
Can you imagine? Cincinnati.
I like that. That's good stuff.
I know.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. Look, we will go through Cynthia's projections coming up in just a couple moments here. Something tells me that when you're doing your projections, I don't know if the Detroit Lions just get a bump. Because
No, they do not.
It doesn't. But
think about it. I'd rather them all be losses. So then, if they win, then I win twice. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. The reverse psychology.
No,
thing
hedge.
As well.
I hedge, then I always win.
Jared Goff has been stellar this season. I keep throwing the phrase out there. Every time you watch the Lions play, the ball doesn't hit the ground. That usually means you're picking up a ton of yardage. Jared Goff has. What's been maybe the most impressive thing that you've seen when he's under duress? 3 consecutive games, 158.3, which is a perfect passer rating. That means all systems are a go. It doesn't mean Jared Goff's doing something absolutely crazy. It means he also is, but it also means that the system he's in is working. Ben Johnson's giving him the right sort of options. The O-line is absolutely ridiculously playing so well. The run game's working. The tight end situation. You seem to see Sam Laporta blocking. You see all of these different things happening to help stop any mayhem from causing turnovers. That was something early in the season. We were seeing some turnovers for Jared Goff. Then they've really shored that up. So it's really how everything's working together and everyone's playing really well together. Because 158.3, you can say you're doing exceptional things and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it gets to that perfect thing repeatedly when everyone's working together.
And you see a lot of trust, right? That's what's happening with their offense. You see trust. Jared's trusting his players. He's trusting the scheme. But I want to go to the other side of the ball because I said earlier I'm all on the Lions being a Super Bowl contender, but they're not going to get there unless they make a move for a pass rusher after this game. We keep hearing Zadarius Smith of the Cleveland Browns. He'd be a perfect fit, right? He's played this division before when he played with the Packers, right? But he's somebody, with Aiden Hutchinson out, if you want to compete against the Chiefs, who've got Karlaftis, who've got Stone Cold Jones, the Niners, who've got Bosa and Leonard Floyd, you've got to get someone who can win individually and put smoke on the quarterback. So Detroit, Brad Holmes, guys, go out there and make the move for a guy who's available to help out your team get over the top because you are very, very close.
Yeah. By the way, the Lions, I was wondering what was going to happen without Aiden Hutchinson. They blitzed on 57.1% of the dropbacks in week number 7 against Minnesota, by far the biggest number that we have seen. So maybe it's just the adjustment when Aiden's not out there and can't win all by himself. Maybe a guy like Zadarius Smith.
Yeah, maybe. Who's also good against the run.
Yes. You kind of stole the show. I was going through some of your projections, and I couldn't help but notice that you did pick the Eagles. You weren't lying.
Nope.
I was going to double down on
Not a favor.
this. But look, you already gave us the analysis on why you think Philly is able to win this game. Is there another one, at least for some of these earlier matchups, that caught your eye?
I think it's maybe surprising that the Ravens only win by 7. I don't have them winning by a bajillion points. I think the Jameis Winston factor means there's a lot more chance for mayhem, volatility. He can throw more touchdowns. He can also turn the ball over more. We've seen both. So more volatility means an increase there.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add there, not surprising, is Baltimore has given up some late touchdowns when the game is out of reach.
A lot of one-possession games.
I'm with you there. Dallas and San Francisco, I know we talked about this a little bit earlier. You do like the Niners. Does a lot of that have to do with some of the injuries for the Cowboys?
More of it has to do with the fact that the thing that the Niners want to do, which is run the football, is the thing that the Cowboys are not great at stopping. So, I mean, Jordan Mason, J.D. Mason, if you're to his friends, it's possible that man has like a bajillion yards and several touchdowns. So that's probably a bigger factor than more of the injuries.
Yeah, and Steve, you and I will be hanging out this Monday night. We'll see if Cynthia's right about the Steelers taking out the Giants. Check this out. Ian Rappaport a few moments ago. Jaden Daniels to start, barring any setback to his workout, according to
Let's go.
And Tracy Wolfson. I will say, let's go. It's time for Sunday's statement. And by the way, that is significant news here because Mike Garafolo about an hour ago, a little less than an hour ago, told us a real game time decision. So as the day unfolds, we get a little more intel. Ian hooks us up. I feel like you can double down now on your Sunday statement.
Yeah, my Sunday statement is that Jaden Daniels in this matchup is the difference maker, overcoming a defense that is more difficult than the one he has, right? So the Bears defense is the much harder defense to overcome, but I don't think Montez Sweat gets any revenge in this game. I think it is Jaden Daniels having a ridiculous day. Do you see the bar there?
I see it.
I know you hate it, but listen, he locks it up today. Lock it up.
I'm choosing violence.
Oh, okay.
I'm choosing violence.
Okay.
I'm going Patriots cornerback Christian Gonzalez has a pick, possibly a pick six, as the Patriots upset the Jets and send the media world into absolute mayhem that the Jets will be tied with the same record as the Patriots after this game. Let's get it.
I love it. I love it.
Can you imagine if this happened? By the way, Christian Gonzalez, one of the smoothest corners that, look, he doesn't get banged up that rookie season. Maybe we're having a different conversation. Fired your head coach. You trade for Devontae Adams. Hassan Reddick now back in the lineup. You go and lose this game. Wow, in the Big Apple. Sunday statement for me. I'll make it quick here. Tua and company, I think he throws for 300. Doesn't mean we're going to go deep. I think Hill and Waddle get back into the end zone. And you said, who are they playing? Well, we got Arizona. Of course that could potentially happen. Let's go, Miami. Let's deliver a big-time offense. Game Center, it starts right